I was teaching my children. I homeschooled them. And it was just like another day, like any other day. And the phone rang. And it was my daughter, who I had given up for adoption 18 years before. And she had found me on Facebook, of, all the places. And we reconnected. And in many ways, that was a really healing experience for me. It was a full circle. I didn't think I'd ever meet her. And yet I was connecting with this now woman. Of course, in my mind, she had always been a baby, but I was connecting with this now woman who I kept a secret.
Hey, housewives, come on in. You know the dirty dishes are still in the sink from yesterday and the laundry is still in the basket. Pop your AirPods in and make yourself at home here.
I'm Tracy.
I'm Tori.
And we are your Unlikely Housewives. Stepping out in faith and believing that God calls the unlikely, we are here to show you the appreciation and validation you deserve, lead you to authentic relationships, and release you of believing the cultural lies to restore your faith and wellness.
Pull up those high-waisted yoga pants, tighten your top knot, and reheat your coffee for the third time. Turn up the volume, and let's go. Hey, housewives.
Hey.
Oh my gosh. This episode. There's so much in this episode. You're going to have to listen to it twice. And she is, oh my gosh, Dr. Zoe is just cool, calm. I cannot imagine her any other way.
I know.
And the way that she just beautifully lays out her story is, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think this is one of those that I didn't see coming. Like you hear a story, just a prominent family and a successful student and athlete and
achiever,
it's the picture perfect.
Yeah. High performer, achiever. Like we go back. One of the common themes that we're finding with this You Are Not Alone series is the behavioral idea of what loving Christ is. Like there's just this, there's the checklist. I'm doing the things and we are striving for a checklist when really what he wants is a relationship, and how God uses, it's not a quick story, but years. But man, you are going to love how Zoe, there's so many good nuggets in this one.
Yeah. So she is now a psychotherapist. She works with women who are struggling with the relationships with themselves, codependency, and so many more, specifically focusing on complex shame. And it comes from her being a 15-year-old girl who was pregnant and her parents sent her off to go have the baby and come home later without. And she lived with that secret for a very long time.
Very long time.
And part of her life was, okay, obviously the secret was deep, but then there were certain things that were making it appear and reappear, and shame has a way of doing that.
And God has a way of redeeming it all and using it all. So
this is for the one who is keeping a secret.
Hey, housewives.
Hey, welcome back.
Welcome back. We are here again, and we are here with another one for you. This, I think we've already shared this with our listeners, but God has used Podmatch. Holy cow. Yeah. Podmatch has been an amazing way that God has created introductions for us. And we are so incredibly thankful for it, because this is where this whole You Are Not Alone for the One has come from. Yeah. And Dr. Zoe is a perfect example of that. Right. And I'm going to let Tracy introduce her.
Okay. So this is Dr. Zoe Shaw, and she is a licensed psychotherapist, author, speaker, podcast host, relationship coach, and fitness fanatic. She is a mom to 5 and a wife. She is passionate about helping women who struggle in difficult relationships, especially that sometimes difficult relationship is with themselves, overcoming shame and codependency. After 15 years in traditional psychotherapy practice, Dr. Zoe jumped off the couch and now helps women using a different modality with a mix of virtual therapy, coaching services, and programs through a lens of psychology, faith, and a dash of feminism. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. That's such a great intro. I have to correct something though. I am no longer a wife. And I heard that and I was like, oh, just for accuracy. Just for accuracy. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Do you want us to restart?
It's up to you. I'm open. I mean, I am such an open book, so I don't think you need to. You can leave that on there, whatever works for you guys in your podcast.
Hey, it just shows how God is always changing. And we're just called to be, like flexible and and sometimes.
And our editor can edit that out, or I can just reread it.
Yes, but that's fine. If this shows how real we are.
Right. I mean, hey, it's also about being real. And there are a lot of people that are no longer wives who shouldn't feel alone in that. So
there you go.
There you go.
Okay.
And that's, and sometimes, and I will say this is that as saying it as about for us, it puts up oh crap, I just put my foot in my mouth. And that is almost another part of the story is because we don't know how to talk. We don't know what do you say when someone says, well, I'm no longer one. That is a very true circumstance too, is that you can. And sometimes, most of the time we make it a bigger deal than it actually is. Right.
I think so. Yeah. I'm on a mission to help women specifically overcome shame. And there are so many things that we have to feel shame about because we've been taught to feel shame, right? We can feel shame if we misspeak. We can feel shame if we don't feel like we have the social position that we think we should. So I say talk about it.
I love that. That's kind of us too. We talk about everything, whether it's welcomed sometimes this one over here. Well, we are thankful that you are here. And we are going to do a separate episode down the road, talking a little bit more about you helping our listeners overcome shame and so forth. Right. However, we're going to talk specifically just about you and your story and a piece of who you are, a piece of where God really led you to this journey that you're on and where you're at right now. So start a little bit telling us about you.
Oh my goodness. I can start. I can tell you about me present, but we can start with the story, however you guys want to do it.
Let's start from the beginning. How were you raised? What was your childhood like? What kind of environment did you grow up in?
Yes, I will tell you the story. So I grew up a little Black girl in a mostly all white farming community in a place called Smithsburg, Maryland, which was right next to Hagerstown, Maryland. I didn't start out that way though, because I started out in Washington, D.C. until I was 9 years old. And so or 8 years old. So we grew up in a very diverse community. And my parents, interestingly, were, they grew up during the civil rights movement and they were kind of a part of that. And my grandparents were activists. And yet my parents really decided to raise us very differently. And I think they felt that they'd kind of overcome all of that. And so they really wanted to raise us in a way that just didn't address race at all, as if it didn't exist. And we ended up moving to this very small farming community in Maryland, which just really shaped me in terms of my own identity and my own shame. And I learned very quickly that the color of my skin was different, but different in a bad way. And I developed a lot of just identity issues growing up. And even in the church, because at that time we went to an all-white evangelical church with a pastor who didn't believe in the mixing of races. And so for me, I had all these kind of storms of questions as a child, like, what's my value, right? Do I matter? Or am I less than to God even, right? Even though there was a part of me that knew that wasn't true. And my parents, they definitely raised us with a lot of esteem, self-esteem. It's just that there was no talk about race, which in retrospect was probably not the best idea. And so that's kind of how, my early foundation. And my father was a medical doctor, a prominent person in the community, and in the, on our faith community. And at 15 years old, I got pregnant. And in our family, that was just not gonna happen. That wasn't going to go down. And additionally, I had been taught that abortion was wrong. We had marched in abortion marches, and my parents donated to Jerry Falwell's Save a Baby Foundation. And we're very much, I was very much taught that abortion was wrong. And so here we are in this conundrum, and I say we because it was me, and then I put my parents in this position, and my parents decided to send me to an unwed mother's home with the not so spoken, but very clear understanding that I would come back without a baby because I was a bad example to my sister, and they couldn't have me living in the home in this way. And, also my parents were very big on what we looked like, to the outside world. And so I was sent away, and I went to the godparent home, and I lived there for the duration of my pregnancy, which was I definitely had the scarlet letter written on my forehead in many ways than one, even in how we were presented as this, group of pregnant women at this home. And I had to make the really hard decision to place my daughter for adoption. I knew that I could not go back home with the baby. And so that's exactly what I did. And I had my baby, and my mom came and bought me a new car for my 16th birthday, and we drove home in my new car, which was just a crazy, crazy experience. And I went home to pretend like nothing had happened, which I did. And I did very well. And I excelled both academically and athletically, living with this shame story. And I learned really how to just bury myself and my grief. And I went on to get a scholarship at UCLA and ran track, and I married an actor and lived the Hollywood kind of celebrity life and had my children. And then I had two boys, and then I had a daughter. Her name is Sullivan, and she was born with a very severe genetic disorder. And I was so excited to finally get a girl after placing my other daughter for adoption. And when we discovered her disorder, I really and truly believed that God was punishing me for placing my first daughter for adoption. And that's when I really went into this very deep shame spiral. I felt that he was punishing me. I felt that then my daughter was being punished for my mistake that I had made. And that was kind of the place where all of the dam of shame and all these things that I had held so tightly and accomplished all of, the things that I accomplished by that time. I had gotten my master's degree, my doctorate, and I was practicing as a therapist, but it just kind of all hit, right? That was my rock bottom in terms of dealing with my own processes, my own psychological processes. And that's when I really started a process of, number one, trying to get used to this new life of being a mom of a special needs child and wrestling with all of my guilt and all of my shame at the same time. And it was many, many years of kind of wrestling with that and going to therapy. And years later, I'm getting a little mixed up on how many years, but I was teaching my children. I homeschooled them. And it was just like another day, like any other day. And the phone rang. And it was my daughter, who I had given up for adoption 18 years before. And she had found me on Facebook, of, all the places. And we reconnected. And in many ways, that was a really healing experience for me. It was a full circle. I didn't think I'd ever meet her. And yet I was connecting with this now woman. Of course, in my mind, she had always been a baby, but I was connecting with this now woman who I kept a secret. And so I was also in a marriage where my husband really wanted me to continue to keep the secret. He kind of was, complicit in my shame story. And so, a huge part of me learning to heal and untangle my shame was kind of showing up for myself. And I'm unfortunately having to stand up to, all of the people in my life who really wanted me to keep this shame story. Ultimately, it took me years, and unfortunately, it was at my father's funeral where my daughter was going to be, where I finally disclosed to my children at that time, who were, I think they were 11, and I think 12, 10, 8, and my baby, I think she was 1, when I finally disclosed to them that they had a sister. And also disclosed to the rest of my family that I had a daughter and introduced her to my whole family. And that was a big part of my healing. It wasn't all of the healing, but that was a big part of my healing, is being able to finally say the thing that I had been so ashamed to say, to speak, let go of that burden that I had been holding for so long. And it was amazing. And for any women out there who have a shame story that they've been holding, the thing that struck me the most was that I had held these 5 words. I don't remember exactly what the words were, but basically telling my children, you have a sister that you never knew, and telling my family, I have a daughter and you guys have a niece and a cousin and all these things that you never knew about. Me just releasing those words, I thought in some way in my mind that the whole world would crumble, that all of these terrible things would happen when I finally released my story, and nothing happened. Nothing. In fact, all the good things happened. And in retrospect, realizing how much I had carried for so many years and how heavy that weight had been for so many years, I realized what a waste it was to not speak up. And of course, we all have many reasons. We're socialized and all of the things. But when you finally share a story that you've been holding for so long, that you feel so much guilt and shame about, and you realize that nobody really cares. I mean, people think about you for 5 minutes. People, may talk about you for 5 minutes, but ultimately no one really cares. It's not worth holding that story. So in a very small nutshell, that's my story.
It's beautiful. First of all, that you're willing to be right here telling that right now. And I'm sure you've told it many other times before and on your podcast, but thank you for your vulnerability and just allowing us, our space, and the Unlikely Housewives to hear this story, because we all have a shame story of some sort. And sometimes there's pieces that have been, chipped away at that we've, shared, and it's not the whole thing. But I think it's amazing that you do have that healing story of your daughter coming and finding you. I do. So this was at your father's funeral is that what you said? So
it was after the funeral, not at the actual funeral, but when everyone came back for the repast. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So had they met, had your parents met her?
Yes. So my parents had met her, which is why she was going to come, because she knew my dad at that point. My parents had met her a year or so before. It was just my extended family that didn't know about her, and family friends and all of those people, because my family had kept it so much a secret. My siblings didn't know for a number of years after, I came back home. They thought that I had gone to boarding school.
Okay, that was one of my questions of what, as far as your parents presenting it, that you're just going to boarding school for a short period of time and you're coming back for after your 16th birthday.
Right. So my siblings were told that. All of our extended church people were told that. My school was told that. Yeah. Wow. And so when I came back a few days after having a baby, I had to pretend like I was at boarding school. Yeah.
At that time, what did your relationship with Christ look like?
So I had been raised Christian, and I was a Christian. I had a personal relationship with God, and my relationship with God has, number one, changed as it should over the years. But I feel that at that time, with the maturity level that I had then, it was very performative, right? And I very much saw God through the lens of kind of the way that I saw my earthly father, as very punitive, as very just not feeling like I could be enough for him. And I remember, I would sit in church and I would watch my mom worship, and I could see how connected she felt with God. And I remember always longing for that, and felt that there must be something fundamentally wrong with me because I couldn't kind of feel what she felt. And it wasn't, it wasn't for many years really after my healing that I really began to understand how fundamental our understanding of God is regarding our earthly father. And so many of us tend to see God through the lens of the way that we see our earthly father. And the other mistake that I know that so many women make, and one that I'm really passionate about talking to women about, because a lot of women who have been hurt by the church, which I have been, a lot of women who feel that, they need to stand up for themselves in their healing, right? That they need to denounce some negative things, whether, it's patriarchy or whatever regarding the church. They feel like they have to leave the church in order to be able to stand in that truth. They feel like they almost really have to leave God in order to be able to stand in that truth. And thankfully, I never felt that. I never felt a need to leave God or the church. What I needed to do is I needed to change my understanding of God and my relationship with him. Because of course we know God is not the church.
Yes.
The church is there as a community, yes, to support us as we should have in our faith walk. But humans hurt humans, and we will forever. And we can't make the mistake of thinking that that's God. It's not. If we're in that place, what we have to understand is we need to be able to change our lens about, change our lens the way that we see God, because it's probably that we are seeing him through a distorted lens.
Yeah, that's so good.
That is so good, because I do think there is a huge trend for young women to believe that you like you said, have to leave the church in order to stand up, or that the church sees less of them because, the idea that Paul didn't like women, or that, but I mean, there's so much out there to disprove all of that. Like, Jesus thought very highly of women.
Yes.
And, I mean, God felt very highly of women. I mean, you have women like Ruth and Esther and Deborah, who was a judge. I mean, that the creator of the universe gave them this incredible story and power to influence the world and be part of his story. And so he very much loves women, and it's not that we're not equal. We're equal, but we're complementary. Right? Is that yes, we're very, it's 50-50, but it just means that we have our places of what he created us to focus on, the micro details, and men to focus on the macro detail. And that is just, he created us specifically for to complement each other.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the church I don't think they present that well, I guess.
No, they don't. And that's what I want to honor is, yes, you're right. The church does not always present that well. And it depends on who the people are that are leading the church and what their leadership is like, the culture in the church. But in many ways, women are still very much demeaned in the church and not valued appropriately. And I think it's important to stand up and talk about that. And we can talk about what humans are doing without in any way putting down God, because they're two separate things.
Yeah,
yes.
That's so good.
Yes. Yeah. And like you said, we have to remember the church is human.
It's human.
I mean, God is not the church. Right.
There's humans running it.
There's humans running it. And that is where we're always going to be disappointed in humans and we need to have that expectation or just realization. I don't know. Both.
Yeah. Acceptance. I think
acceptance better.
Yeah.
That's
I would love to know a couple things. One, when this was all happening, when you found out you were pregnant, you're talking to your family, just kind of go back to that story a little bit. There is no doubt you felt, obviously, the immediate disappointment, decisions, I mean, just the feeling from your parents. And I'm curious because this is just not the exact topic, but a conversation having with my kids, teaching them about unconditional love. When you fail, I have teenagers, when you fail, you come home And my oldest said something just this week, and he said, I would rather disappoint someone else than disappoint my parents.
Yeah.
And I said, really? Like, explain that to me. And he goes, well, the disappointing you guys hurts worse than I'm disappointing someone else. And I said, but we're the space that you can disappoint us over and over. You can fail in our home, you can fail outside of our home, but come back to us and we will love you over and over and over. If you disappoint someone else, you don't get that same grace.
No.
They're not going to say, hey, come back over here, disappoint us again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But we as parents, it's just part of how we raising our kids. You're going to fail and you're going to disappoint us, but you're coming back and we're going to do it again and again and again. Obviously, because that's how, God views us and our worlds and our lives. So when I'm asked this question, it's kind of with that in mind, because we're here. Our stories aren't the same, but we're walking through similar things, right? So I would just love to know from your perspective how you sat with that, because and how you handled that at that time. If you can go back to that 15-year-old self, and what that was like coming back, being 16, 17, and really what that looked like in relationship with parents, because we're raising teens. We talk about teens a lot on here, and I know there's a lot of parents who have teens, and I'm talking personal too.
Hey,
like, like how do you keep, making sure that, like, yes, you disappointed us, but we love you anyway. Like, what was that like for you? I hope you can understand where I'm coming from.
Oh, can I ever understand where you're coming from? Both, first of all, having experienced that as an adolescent and then as a mom of 5 children, I feel you on all those levels. And as you're talking to Tracy, I'm just thinking, what a gift. What a gift, because you say that as if that is the norm, what you are doing with your children. And unfortunately, it's not. It's not. Is that the role? Is that the model that God gives us? Yes, he does. He gives us grace and he loves us unconditionally. Is that the message that most children get from their parents? Unfortunately, probably not. But and the sad part is most parents love their children unconditionally, right?
Yeah.
They do. But I don't know that we give that message to our children, because we are tasked with this huge, role of raising these children to be these productive citizens, to impart our faith, to impart all our wisdom and our knowledge. And sometimes as parents, we're so focused on that, and we're so focused on the outcome that we forget to really just sit with our children in the space and let them know that they are accepted and they are loved and all their deficiencies and all of who they are, and that we are here for them. So first, I want to say thank you for saying that, because
thank you for saying that, because that makes me feel better. Because parenting is hard right now.
Oh goodness, it's hard in so many stages. So my experience as a 15-year-old girl growing up in a very achievement-oriented family, and in a Black family, in a white environment, there's definitely that message that we have to appear this way and we have to be better and work harder and do all of these things in order to achieve the things that we want to achieve. And so coming from that history, right, of very high achievers and all of my family, there wasn't a lot of room for mistakes. So there just wasn't. Did my parents love me unconditionally? Absolutely. There's this concept though of there's love unconditionally and then there's acceptance unconditionally. I was just talking on a podcast yesterday to a woman who wrote a book called I Like You So Much, it was a children's book. And she talked about the fact that, as parents, we tell our children, we love you. How often do we really tell them, I like you? Right. And so children know that we're loved. I knew that I was loved, but it means even more to hear from someone that you love, that they like you almost than it is that they love you. Because love is almost a given, right? And we do so many things in the name of love that are just not even healthy and downright toxic. But for someone to like you. So I say that because I knew that I was loved unconditionally. But I don't know that I felt accepted unconditionally. There's certain, just like when I got pregnant, my parents were like, absolutely not, you got to go. Right. And so there was not space in that relationship for me to be able to feel like I could share my deficits. I could share this horrible, terrible thing and, their eyes that I had done. And so I hid. So that's a part of the story I didn't tell you. When I found out I was pregnant, I could not bring myself, and I tried so many times, I literally could not bring myself to tell my mom. I couldn't get those words past my lips because I was devastated. I was a pleaser, first of all. I was that perfect, like I'm a middle child. I have an older sibling, older son, a brother, younger daughter, sister. And I'm thinking about my kids. And I was the good one. I didn't give my parents any trouble. I was the pleaser. I, was the person that always did what they wanted. And I prided myself in that. So for me to fail in this massive way, and I was also an overachiever, even as a 15-year-old, it was devastating. It was devastating. It was humiliating. It was terrifying. And I could not get those words past my lips. And so I didn't tell her. I hid it. I hid my pregnancy for as long as I could hide it. I was an athlete. I went through volleyball season pregnant. I remember once when I literally dove to hit the ball, to hit the ball and landed on my stomach, and I felt my baby in my stomach, I literally felt her. And that's when I was like, oh, I went a little too far there. I started track season pregnant. And I started just kind of wearing the baggy things and hiding myself. And my mother figured it out. Because, I was changing the way I was eating. I was hiding, my body. And so she came to me and she asked me, "Are you pregnant?" And even then, this is the crazy thing, even then I could not admit it to her. I told her, "I don't know," which was an admission already, because by saying I don't know, it admitted that I was having premarital sex, that it was a possibility,
Right.
but I still could not tell her. And I allowed my poor mom to take me to a pregnancy center, get a pregnancy test, and the woman told my mother that I was pregnant. That is how much I was afraid of the disappointment of my parents.
I don't think again, you're not alone in that story.
No.
I think there's so many people that it's like can't come to admission and truth. It's
just saying the words is the hardest part. And and I think one of the things that I like when you're talking about, like, we have this idea of what love is, but like, do we like our children, do we like our children? And I think part of it is true love, which is God is love.
Right.
We cannot fathom that. Like you said, we have our brains cannot handle what actual love is. Right. And look, we can't, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to go send your one and only son to the cross for all of these people who have cursed you and spit on you and have done all these things, and that, to still say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Like, we don't understand love. We don't know what that actually means.
Right.
And so there's no definition other than God is love that we can, because we don't understand the definition, we don't know how to show love.
We don't know how to walk it out in the healthiest way. Yes.
Right. And if you don't, exactly. And if you don't know Christ, I want to say that you don't know what love is even more than somebody who is walking with Christ is. Because Christ, as Christ followers, we realize that we are broken. We need a savior. And that is why he came and saved us. And that is why he sacrificed his son. And we understand, like, much of what love is to get us to know that we realize that we need a savior and accept Christ as our savior. But then, like, for a non-Christ follower, I can't imagine the idea that they how do you know what love is if you don't know what to define it? How do you define it? And I think that's maybe, that one just struck me as the definition of love and what it is and how we And like you said, not everyone is gifted a parent like Tracy.
Yeah.
And I say that loving, but that can have the conversation like, you're, like, why wouldn't you come to, like, why you would go to somebody else to just tell them, but you wouldn't come to me. And it's, it's the example of like, hey, if you're drunk at 2 a.m., call me. I don't care. Yep. We will not discuss it. I want you to come with me with anything. And I think my girls are, I hope they're not out drunk at 2 a.m., but now that they're 12. Hey, it's early. It's 2025, Tracy. Okay. All right, give them a chance. 12 and 10. Yeah. But like, I'm trying to tell my children, like, also, like, yes, call me, let me be your first phone call. But also, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to screw this up royally. Like, there is going to be a time that I react wrong.
Yep.
Like, there's going to be a time where I yell. There's going to be a time where I say, WTH, like,
yeah.
But I need you to have the grace for me too. So like, let me be that. I'm warning you. I'm here for you, but I want you to also to know that I'm human too. And I am going to screw this up, and I'm not going to give you the reaction. I'm going to try my best to have the Holy Spirit overwhelm me to keep my mouth shut. But there's some times where my mouth is quicker than the Holy Spirit hand over my mouth. And so there are things that slip out. So,
well, I also want to go back to this, because as you're saying this and we're talking and we've had this conversation all summer, and I think it's going to continue into the fall because we keep having these conversations. One of the things that you're saying, obviously you came to your parents, you told them, they obviously came up with the plan that continued on. You went and had the baby, came back. One of the things that, granted, you're 15, your parents were guiding you, so you weren't technically an adult and have that free will, to make the choice. But whether you do or not, God still redeems all things. And it's just it's a different story. It's a different timing. It's a different ending, however, like when you're in it, did you feel that this was the best option and Jesus is going to love me anyway? Or was this something that came later?
Are you talking about the choice to place my daughter for adoption?
Yes.
So I'll go back, because I didn't share one little part of the story, which is a big part of the story, I think. My first choice was to abort her. That was my first choice, because I was in that space of, I cannot tell my parents. I would rather abort her than experience the shame. And so that was my plan, was I'm just going to get an abortion. I'm not going to tell them, even though I knew deeply in my heart what I had been taught was that abortion was not God's plan for humanity. Right. And yet my boyfriend and I agreed that we were going to do this. And I skipped school one day, the only time I've ever skipped school. Actually, he picked me up at school and I kind of ran out, and he drove me to the abortion clinic, and we went in, and I went into the clinic, and they have like a group of girls all pregnant that they do this little counseling, which is not counseling, pre-abortion counseling, which I guess was mandated by the state. In the process, they give you like this little red pill that's like supposed to relax you or whatever. And I remember when I was doing the counseling thing and I took she gave me the pill, and I looked up at her and I said, well, will this harm the baby? And of course she looks at me like I'm crazy. Like, you're about to abort this baby. Why are you concerned about this baby? Of course they didn't call it a baby. But so I went into the abortion room, and the doctor came in and he put the ultrasound on my belly, and he was looking at the baby, and he mentioned that I was a little further along, but he could definitely do it. And in that moment, something just came over me, and I literally sat up and I said, I changed my mind. And the doctor, the nurse was just kind of trying to tell me, oh, don't worry about it. Everybody feels kind of nervous right before this kind of procedure. Just, relax. And then I just kind of got into this like mama bear fighting mode. And I was like, no, I changed my mind. And the doctor looked at me. He was so irritable. And he just like put the ultrasound thing up, and he just looked at me and he's like, you've wasted my time. I'm not going to treat you if you come back. Like, good luck to you, and walked out of the door.
Gosh.
Yeah. And so I literally like jumped off the table, threw my clothes on, and I walked out of that room holding my socks and my shoes, and my boyfriend's in the lobby looking at me like, is it done? And I'm like, no, I changed my mind. Let's go. And we took off. So, I share that story for a couple of reasons. Number one is I have so much empathy and understanding from a woman who's gone through it, because I almost did. I mean, my daughter was almost not here. It was so close. And I have zero judgment. I really believe that all behavior makes sense in its context. And the only reason why I wasn't able to go through it is because of all of the teaching that my parents had instilled in me up until those years. Otherwise, I know without a doubt I would have gone through it. So you're asking about my decision. In many ways, you asked if I'd owned the decision, I think is what you said later before. So that was my first decision that I made, was essentially to keep her. But, when I say that, it was almost like it wasn't my decision. My choice was to go abort her. And I literally could not do it. God meant for her to be on this earth. And so after that, and after I disclosed to my parents and we ended up, that they sent me to the home, I don't know that I consciously understood that I had any choice, to be honest with you. I definitely imagined I would fantasize that I would bring her home. I'd fantasize that my boyfriend and I were going to run off and get married and live in this castle, and, money was no option and all those wonderful things. So I fantasized a world where I could keep her, but I don't think I ever was able to really create any real life in my mind that I could keep her. And so for me, I did not have an option. My mother did send me a letter at one point when I was there, and my interpretation of the letter was like, if you choose to keep this baby, you will lose me in some way, shape, or form. And I think at some point I really just chose my parents over her. And I think I had a lot of guilt about that I chose keeping my parents and whatever that meant for me over my own daughter. So I think it wasn't until later that I came to understand that I made a choice and I didn't make a choice at the same time. I made a choice because I didn't know any other choice to make, right? I made a choice to keep my parents and their acceptance and their love, and to be able to go back home without condemnation. That was the choice that I made, because I didn't feel like that there was any other. So it's kind of like, it's a little murky. And what I do know is that whether I made the choice or I didn't make the choice, whether the choice was forced on me, there's a couple of things I know. Number one, it was in God's plan.
Yeah.
And number two, my parents were doing the very best that they could with all of their life circumstances and what they knew. And so I have come to a place where I have forgiven myself for the choices that I made, and I have forgiven my parents for the choices that they made. So it's not an exact answer, but that's where I am.
No, and I think that it's good. It's important because, I mean, that's all we're doing. That's all our parents ever did, right? You're doing your best based with what you have, the knowledge and experiences that you have, the faith that you have, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. You just take all that into consideration, and a decision is made, and you hope it's the best. And that is exactly what's happening. And I love that you've seen the beauty from that decision, and you have a relationship with your daughter from that. And without a doubt, she was supposed to be here, and that's just beautiful. Yeah. Well, before we wrap up here, I do want to kind of fast forward a little bit. Now that you're a parent and you have teenagers, what does this conversation look like with you and your kids, talking about premarital sex, or because this is a hard conversation for parents in the Christian world?
Oh yeah. I think even more now, which I'm happy for, because during the purity culture, when I grew up,
Right.
there was so much shame and condemnation, right, about sexuality, which is something that God gave us. And I feel like now we've swung the pendulum, and maybe we've swung it too far, which often happens. The pendulum just swings. It never really stays in a healthy middle. It's so nuanced. So number one is, if we go back to the failure part, like kids not wanting to tell their parents about failure, part of what I do and what I've done with my children, probably less with my older son, because I was not as great a parent as I am now with my younger ones, is saying you need to expect failure. Like, it's not if, it's when, right?
Yep.
And
Right.
especially this time in adolescence and 20s, like, you're going to fail so much. And just know that, like, that's part of this experience in your life. And for me, even when I told my son when he went to college, I said, you just, like, you live your life without that fear of failure, knowing that you have a net right now, and that's not given to everybody. You have a net so that if you can fail, you can always come back here, always. Now, when it comes to premarital sex, what I have told my children is that I don't believe that that's God's plan for us as humans. That God's perfect plan for us is to be able to come together in a marriage where we are both experiencing each other for the first time and forever, right? That's God's perfect plan.
Right.
Now, then there's humanity, and God has perfect plans for so many things that don't end up living out that way, because
we screw it up every single time.
That's what humans do.
Exactly. There was only two of us on the earth. Adam and Eve couldn't keep their crap together. Literally. So, I mean, we are our biggest enemy.
Right. They still screwed it up. And, I believe that God's perfect plan for marriage is that two people should be married forever, that we join together and stay that way. And yet I am divorced. And that is because of the reality of our humanity. And so God gives us grace for the reality that we cannot, because of sin that exists in this world, live out his perfect plan. And so that's kind of how I present it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's the best that we can do.
Yeah.
We can give them all the information and have all the conversations. And in the end,
and at the same time,
they have their own brains.
Exactly. Exactly. And at the same time, as I want to say two things. One, as believers, we know that we need to be reminded that nothing, I cannot screw up enough to thwart God's plan.
Nope.
So whatever, he already knows everything that I'm going to screw up. He has already put it into consideration. Tori's going to screw up this tomorrow, so I'm going to have to get X, Y, and Z to happen in order to get her back on track. Yeah. Like that I try to remind myself.
I mean, your story is obviously one that is personal, something that you've walked through, but I think the greatest gift you're giving people is just sharing your vulnerability and encouraging people to walk out things that are really difficult. Our stories may not be the same, but we all, have our own something that we're ashamed of, something that we're holding on to. And I just hope, that our listeners are just finding some courage in you sharing your story and the healing that you've had, because that's really ultimately what we want for everybody, to be living as free as we can without shame, and just being as happy and joy filled and walking with the Lord the best that we can.
Yeah. As Christ has, the only way we can to do all that is through Christ.
Yeah.
So, where can our listeners find out more about your upcoming book? Where can they follow you on social media? What is your website? We want to make sure that listeners that really connected with you here are able to find you.
Yeah. You can find me anywhere at the handle Dr. Zoe Shaw, ZOESHAW. That's my website, drzoeshaw.com. My Insta handles, my social handles. I have a podcast called Stronger in the Difficult Places, also the same name as my book. You can find that anywhere podcasts are be accessed.
Yeah, right. We never say how wherever you find podcasts. All the places.
They're all the places now.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
who's listening to a podcast and not knowing where to find a podcast? No one. No one. There's not one person. So they're just so
Find them everywhere.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your story and allowing God to use you to help others feel not alone. And he redeems all things. And it is so very clear in your story and your walk with him. And I just want to say thank you for being obedient and just listening. Yeah. So,
well, thank you, women, for being able to be courageous and share other people's stories and help others feel that they're not alone. That's so important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, housewives, until next time.
Bye.
Whether we made you laugh or cry today, we pray you feel appreciated, bolder and braver than yesterday, stronger and more faithful for tomorrow, and living in who you were made to be today.
Join our online community on Facebook, link in the show notes, and be sure to review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you enjoy listening. Until next time, housewives, we give you permission to walk confidently, free, and to be intentional in your slippers or stilettos.